Long Take Review, a film podcast with one eye always on the Oscar race. I'm your host, Jen Subchukchai Bankard, and I'm here with a brutalist and a baby girl. You'll have to decide. First, he shares a psychotic delusion with me every time we do this podcast. P.T. McNiff. How's it going, P.T.?
If I comment, I'll just be sharing my opinion from my perspective, and the other creatives aren't here to say their piece, and it just doesn't feel that that would be right. I'm not sure how that would be helpful, so I don't think I will. I'm doing well, Jen. How are you?
I'm great. I'm great now. Joaquin Phoenix, ladies and gentlemen. And he's always in the room next door. It's Greg Cass. How's it going, Greg?
Jen, I'm sorry you got in a tiff with PT, but I hope you two can Telluride it out to get through this podcast together.
So we're a dad joke podcast now. I like it. I'm not mad about it. So, poor listeners, those were all references to films that have premiered at 3 of the biggest fall film festivals of the year. So 3 of them just wrapped up. Fall festival season is here. So we had the Venice International Film Festival, which had very many glitzy red carpets, the Telluride Film Festival, where everyone wears flannel, and the Toronto International Film Festival, that is very famous for the Audience Award, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. That is a massive precursor for the Oscars. None of these films have been released to the general public yet, so we are kind of like picking up secondhand information from critics who are on the ground. But most of these movies will be out in the next couple of months. I was doing the list of release dates that we know so far, and like December is going to be busy, y'all. Like it's get ready. And we're going to try to keep this as spoiler free as we can, because we really are trying to design this. Like on the one hand, we are geeking out, and when I say we I mean mostly me, who's obsessed with this. Geeking out over the reactions and kind of like the gamification of the Oscars race. But it's useful to you, dear listeners, because it's sort of, previewing what movies are going to be coming out in the next couple of months. So that's kind of our pitch to you, doing something very selfish, which has a side benefit to you listening to this podcast. PT, if listeners think this episode is a monumental conclave, what can they do?
I don't have a good pun to lead into the information, so I'll just say that if you don't want to miss new episodes talking about movies that you haven't seen and we haven't seen, then please follow the Long Take Review wherever you get your podcasts. We host the feed on Jen's Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. You can also find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Overcast, YouTube, and anywhere podcasts are available. You can also follow us on Instagram and Threads at The Long Take Review, as well as on Letterboxd. The account is at LTRpod, or you can search for the hashtag LTRpod and see what each of us has been watching. Jen?
And I frequently forget the LTR pod hashtag, and then I hear Greg's voice yelling at me, and then I go back and put it in.
You go back, you post the review and go back and edit it. Yeah.
Yes. Yep. If anybody notices that hashtag is missing from a Letterboxd review of mine, please tell me. All right. So I think this is how we're going to do this. We are kind of dubbing this the winners and losers. That is sort of the parlance we have chosen to use as a framework for this. We are all the winners because we like talking about these movies, but there are certain movies that had higher expectations and kind of were disappointments. There were other movies that kind of came out of nowhere and everyone's really excited about. So we're going to kind of go around the proverbial room and have everybody share one winner coming out of these festivals, and then we're going to go around and do one loser. We may do that a couple of times kind of until the conversation peters out or PT and Greg get tired of talking about this. And then we'll kind of zoom out at the end to see what this means for the Oscar race in general and kind of do an Oscar temperature check. So who wants to go first? I feel like I should go last.
Oh, I was just going to say you should get to go first.
Yeah,
I should get to go
first. This is your show, and you've done the real research and the hard work, so I think
it also will cover up for the, like, at the end when it's you over and over, it won't feel as bad if you started. Yeah.
Okay.
Should we also do the movie news update if this is a whole movie news episode?
Oh, for the whole episode? I did think about that, but then I didn't want to confuse people. But let's just do it.
Just in off the wire, it's your Hollywood news.
That's setting the tone. I love it. All right, so I'm going to start with actually the biggest news because I think that this is the kind of headline just in terms of the timeliness of us recording. But I am going to go with a movie I did not see coming and totally bowled me over with winning the TIFF Audience Award, and that is The Life of Chuck. And I feel like a schmuck for not having realized that this was going to win the Audience Award. So just for a little context, like the TIFF Audience Award historically, on the one hand, is like usually won by crowd pleasers, not always, but usually, or like that's kind of TIFF's representation. Out of these three festivals, it tends to be kind of the most populist overall, and the least art house, right? But at the same time, the Audience Award winner has been like a massive bellwether for the Oscars. So like last year it was American Fiction. I think it's 12 years in a row or something crazy like that this winner has been in the Best Picture lineup.
Well, actually, Jen, it's been 15 of the last 16. It only, except for 1 year in there, it's been a long run that this has been an indicator of at least a nomination, and there's quite a few winners in here.
Amazing. Yeah, and actually, like when I was looking back at the list, Nomadland, what was the other one that I saw?
Green Book, your favorite.
Mm-hmm. 12 Years a Slave, to bring it back to a good movie.
Yeah. I was going to say La La Land. Oh, wait, no. Moonlight actually won that year.
And then going back a little further, King's Speech and Slumdog Millionaire.
Okay. Yeah. Wow.
Antonio aching about the Social Network loss again.
So yeah, it has quite a pedigree, and so everyone gets really excited when this award gets announced. And what's interesting is that I listened to a bunch of critics who had been watching movies at these festivals, and TIFF in particular, and the most I heard was like, "Oh yeah, and there's this movie with Tom Hiddleston by Mike Flanagan. I guess it's a Stephen King novella, whatever." And like they'd move on, and I'd be like, "Okay, so it really just wasn't on my radar at all." And so when the news broke that this is what won the Audience Award, I was like, "Hold on." And actually, like Derek Murray, who is a film critic that I follow on social media, I believe his handle is Drock Comedy, said that like people really love this movie, and like he wasn't surprised and kind of thought it would sort of be in the top winners. So shout out to him for calling this, and me for missing it. I even posted a video of Tom Hiddleston dancing at TIFF and was like, "Isn't this great? People are loving this," and totally didn't make the connection that meant this movie was going to be popular.
The indication that I had while it was unfolding was seeing updates about how many screenings they were added, which I guess at TIFF, and again, I'm speaking blindly because I've not been to this film festival, but I guess when a movie's really popular and there's like people turned away at the early stages, they start to, on the later days, put extra screenings in of the popular movies. And there were a few presumed frontrunners that I assume we will get to that were there that were doing that. And there was also like, and Life of Chuck has added like 4 more screenings. So that was like, oh, that's interesting. Now, are you all on board with, up to date with the Mike Flanagan universe and the Stephen King history of things?
No.
So he's I think most prominently his work has been on Netflix doing these sort of scary, which I'm realizing, of course, Jen hasn't watched these, like classic horror stories, but done in an updated way. So it was The House on Haunted Hill, the Haunting of Bly Manor, and The Fall of the House of Usher are I think 3 of the prominent ones. And then he's made 2 earlier adaptations, I believe, of a Stephen King book, Gerald's Game and Dr. Sleep, which was the sequel to The Shining, which is as successful as it possibly can be because it's a sequel to the Stephen King book, an adaptation of the book that's a sequel to the Stephen King book, but also a sequel to the Stanley Kubrick movie that changed a bunch of stuff from the book and Stephen King hated and wrote the book to like negate what happened in the movie. So he's trying to balance all of these things and is doing a great job. Ewan McGregor as the main character, Danny, grown-up Danny from The Shining, and Rebecca Ferguson in a gloriously weird hat, doing an incredible job. So yeah, he's had this long relationship of literary adaptations and specifically doing movies based on Stephen King work. So it's great that this is sort of leveled up, and he's I think people have really liked him, and he's built this sort of coterie of actors who are frequently in his work. And that said, I don't know. I had no expectation that this was going to be anything beyond like something that was probably going to show up on Netflix at some point because he's got a development deal with them for the TV shows. But
which apparently has ended. I don't know if you were aware of this.
Oh yes, because he's doing an Amazon one now.
Yes.
I did think I did see that.
So he left Netflix, and there was no indication, or I didn't look into this enough to know if they left on bad terms or if it just like whatever their deal was ended. But yeah, he's now in the process of developing a Dark Tower series, I think, for Amazon. So there's a lot of speculation, because I should make it clear, this movie does not have any distribution yet. No one has bought it, and that is very unusual for a winner of this award. And so I'm just gonna sit back and watch this like crazy bidding war that's probably gonna happen, right? And we'll see what happens. But I think critics who are kind of in the industry, like journalists and stuff, who know how this stuff works, they have sort of speculated that, well, it kind of makes the most sense that if Flanagan's already collaborating with Amazon, that they might have a leg up over everybody else in terms of getting the rights to this movie. So and I think it was this had Oscar buzz, cited that like it's been 10 years since a TIFF Audience Award winner has not actually had distribution at the time of its winning.
Oh.
So this is like really unprecedented. But I'm going to ask Greg. Greg, do you know at all what this movie is about?
I do not, Jen. No. Well, I want to respond to a few things there in a part of my answer. First of all, I approached Dr. Sleep being a huge fan of The Shining and being like, no way this is going to work. And I thought it was pretty awesome. I did watch the director's cut, which I have been told is better than whatever was in theaters, but I watched it. I think HBO Max had both for a long time. I'm not sure if that's still true. So PT dropping that this is the Dr. Sleep guy, I thought, is a big plus in my category, because I thought he got Stephen King. Being the truest son of New England, a child of New England on this podcast, I will say that, Stephen King is like a wonderful presence and like an uncle to us all still. And like to like remember that he's had this like crazy resurgence over the last decade or so is just nuts. And the fact that they maybe found something a little different in his canon, like, I don't know, Shawshank Redemption, which is not your typical Stephen King story or something you think about for him, makes me excited. To your actual question, I became aware of this movie when Mark Hamill posted himself at the premiere sitting next to Stephen King. And he was just so excited. It was very endearing. And Mark Hamill is in this movie. As PT pointed out, he and Mia Sara, is that the right? Yes. Are playing the grandparents, which is deeply upsetting.
I love that.
But I saw Mark Hamill's post, and he said it was The Life of Chuck. And I swear to you, in my head, I went, oh, Mark Hamill's in another Chucky movie, because he did a voice for one of the latter-day Chucky movies. And I was like, well, that's kind of fun that Stephen King showed up for a Life of Chucky movie. Good on them. I don't want to see it, but good on them. So then when it came around and I understood how badly I was mistaken, I got pretty excited about this. I want to throw in and toss it back to Jen on this note with, I think Tom Hiddleston is kind of due for something that critics get to love him in. I think he's, one of the big winners across the MCU. He got in and out before he got chewed up completely. And I will speak only for myself. I thought, of latter-day Marvel, Loki's a real bright spot, and the 2 seasons of that show together show off him and his skills. And I think, it feels a little bit like Robert Downey Jr. in Oppenheimer. If he's just okay, we'll make sure we kind of give him big awards. Jen, do you think there's a chance for Tom Hiddleston to be in those races, or are you thinking just a Best Picture, perhaps?
So I'm not totally sure because this movie, in terms of what it actually is, was kind of hard for me to pin down. It was a lot of kind of like whispers and bits and pieces from here and there, and me trying to puzzle it together. So it sounds like Tom Hiddleston, while a central figure because he is the titular Chuck, may not actually be in a ton of the movie, because he's like he's a figure in the movie. And like if you've seen any stills from the movie, the only thing they've let out, I think, is there's a picture of a billboard with him on it, and it's like, "Thanks, Chuck, for 29 years of service," or whatever. And so like I think he's central to the plot of the movie, but maybe is not like giving like a lot of dialogue and stuff like that. I don't know. There is apparently a dance number so the dance that he did for a crowd at TIFF is the dance that he does in the movie. What I have heard, I can say, and this will get, I think, both of you pretty happy, is that I can't remember who it was, but someone I was listening to said that they think Mark Hamill could get in supporting.
Hey,
I know Greg got so excited. His eyes just popped open, because apparently he has just like this like earth-shattering monologue at some point in the movie that apparently is really good. So
and for those for the two of you and anybody listening, like the two of you, long earth-shattering monologues are a cornerstone of Mike Flanagan's TV shows, where there will be like an entire episode is building up to one character talking for like 10 minutes. And great. And it's really good. I should also shout out, even though it isn't a adaptation of an existing literary thing, there's also a show called Midnight Mass, which I think might be my favorite, which has three like I'm thinking right now of these three incredible monologues of people. And I know at least one of those actors is also in this movie. So it's not surprising to hear there's an actor that has a great monologue. It's great to hear that it was Mark Hamill, and that may carry him to maybe getting that career nomination, if not even beyond that.
So the reason this movie is kind of hard to pin down is because apparently it's not horror, as we've kind of alluded to, right? Everyone keeps assuming it's horror because it's Stephen King. It is apparently an apocalyptic science fiction drama, but also everyone keeps saying it's so popular because it is life affirming and a feel good movie and hopeful. And so, I mean, that's both confusing and exciting at the same time. Because I'm like, what does that even mean? I don't know. But I guess like a lot of the it makes you feel like there's hope despite the world literally coming to an end. And I feel like in 2024, that's probably something people are craving. So yeah, this movie I feel like has a lot of potential. The downside to it in terms of like that, people arguing that it's probably not going to go very far despite winning this audience award, is because one, it's structurally apparently unusual. Like it's broken up into three, like not short stories, but like three parts, right?
The novella, the Stephen King novella is apparently like 3 acts told in reverse order. So Act 3 comes first, then Act 2, then Act 1.
Right. So not everyone might be into that. The Academy might be like, what is this? And that like the people who have been kind of meh about it have sort of said that it's like it's a good concept, but maybe doesn't like carry it home at the end. It like doesn't stick the landing necessarily. So yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. I would say that this whole round of film festivals, if I had to characterize all of the reviews, overwhelmingly lots of mixed reviews.
Yes.
So in a lot of movies where I'm like, I hear everybody's reactions and I'm like, I don't know if this movie's good. I really don't. Like so many of these we're going to say. Anyway, so I mean, I like science fiction. I really like Tom Hiddleston. And the cast of this looks crazy. We haven't mentioned Chiwetel Ejiofor, Karen Gillan, I think Jacob Tremblay, and then it says, Wikipedia says it's narrated by Nick Offerman, which I haven't heard anybody mention. But I'm like, this seems perfect. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see.
You're saying count us all in, and we should all buy the novella and read the collection before the movie comes out. Good.
Long take review book club. If this does carry forward the TIFF audience award tradition, it will be the third Stephen King adaptation to be nominated Best Picture after The Shawshank Redemption and The Green Mile. which is interesting. Mostly interesting because
none of
that's
those horror movies.
Correct.
Yeah,
And it's a reminder of how the most nominations The Shining got was from the Razzies when it came out because people hated it. But guess who wins? Guess who wins in the end? Me, because I love The Shining. And also, I guess, Stanley Kubrick.
So for those of you looking to join the book club, the underground book club of this podcast, apparently, the collection is called If It Bleeds. And Life of Chuck is like one of the novellas in that collection. So, all right.
Which
nice.
I'll just also throw in 2020, which, you know, when we talk about Stephen King, he has such a long and prolific career. I kind of assumed this would be back in his heyday, but this is pretty recent and interesting. I mean, a 2020 publication date means he probably wasn't writing it during the pandemic, but apocalyptic kind of in that moment is kind of interesting too.
I also, that's reminding me, I also heard a critic say that they really felt that the pandemic was influencing this movie a lot. So who knows? Everything I learn about this movie, I'm like, I know less about what this is now. Like,
it does feel like, I mean, and this kind of is in line with just looking at those the recent audience award winners, which just to run it off for the last few years: American Fiction, The Fabelmans, Belfast, Nomadland, Jojo Rabbit, Green Book, and then Three Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, and La La Land. These are all movies that do feel like they're not all positive, but they do all seem like they're trying to be like, but things could be better. And I think that there's a lot of people react poorly to those over the course of an award season, or at least it sort of curdles over time when people are like, I'm sick of this movie and I don't want to hear about it anymore. Like, this is going to be the villain of the story of the year. And so I could see this falling in line with all of those. But I also could see it being something that we love, even though the cynical people don't like it. And that's okay.
But I'm just going to warn everybody right now, if you have bad takes about this movie, the Tom Hiddleston stands, they're coming for you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, watch out.
Separate from that, the Mark Hamill stands are coming, and it's me and Greg. And we're just going to be rolling. We're rolling into your town.
And me. Don't leave me out of that.
Well, I didn't want to include you in the physical threat of rolling into someone's town.
Yeah, I don't want a part of that.
You'll just retweet. You'll repost the footage.
Here's Jen's edit point, perhaps, but my absolute favorite way to think about Stephen King is if people don't know, he sits at a lot of Red Sox games every season in Fenway Park. And one year during the playoffs, I think it might have been even 2004, it might have been the 2007, he was in the audience and they sent some hapless Fox commentator down to interview him. And the interviewer's like, "Hi, Mr. King," and they banter. And then he's like, "I see you're holding a book. Why is that?" And Stephen King's like, "Because Fox slows the pace down so much, I can read a lot while you go to commercial live on air." And the guy didn't know what to do. And so the guy says, like, "Well, what book is it? Is it one of yours?" And Stephen King gives him a withering look. And it's like, why would I be reading one of my own books that I wrote? And they basically cut back to the booth and gave up. So beautiful, beautiful man, Stephen King, excited that he's having yet another kind of moment.
Stephen King, a king. That's great. I love it. All right. So we managed to spend 20 minutes just on my turn. So someone else would go.
All right. I will throw out a movie that I didn't see coming, which is my way of saying that Jen might have known more about this before the festivals. But it is a movie called The Brutalist, which is a historical drama about an immigrant architect who survives the Holocaust after World War II, comes to America, and tries to build up his life and his career. And it's this incredibly, it's like 3.5 hours long, directed by someone who I will admit I don't know this person. He directed Vox Lux, which was a movie that came out 5 or 6 years ago. And I heard about, and I heard it was like, it's weird, it's ambitious, we kind of like it, Natalie Portman's in it, but we don't know like if it's going to land, and it didn't go anywhere. It didn't go anywhere in terms of Oscars. But yeah, he's very annoyingly only 36 years old. and was an actor. I mean, is an actor and acted as sort of a in his 20s. He was in 13, Funny Games, Martha, Marcy May, Marlene, Melancholia, a few other things. Yeah, it was in a season of 24, and apparently just blew everyone away with this movie that he's been developing for a few years, and people are just saying that this is this sweeping epic that is going to absolutely be, or at least people are saying it should be. The festival attendees and the critics who were there are just like, well, this is one of the best movies of the year. This should be a front runner. It might be too long. It might be too much for people, but that it's really good. Adrian Brody is the main character, and they're saying it's certainly his best performance since the Pianist, which he won his Oscar for. Disrespect to his performance in the Grand Budapest Hotel, but and other movies, but that's fine. But still, that it's an incredible performance, maybe better than his performance that he won the Oscar for in the Pianist. And I'm really excited now to see this. The supporting cast includes Guy Pearce as the sort of patron client who hires him, and I'm assuming, having not read too much into it, beyond just like the cast listing, like, oh well, I guess he becomes the enemy at some point, or the foe that like he has to sort of have intellectual battles with. And then Felicity Jones, who is the character who becomes Adrian Brody's wife, and she is also supposed to be absolutely incredible in this. So yeah, I mean, big sweeping historical epic, 3.5 hours. I've got time. I'll watch it. I'm excited to see how this turns out. Again, knowing next to nothing about Brady Corbett, but knowing that now he's in the conversation for, is he a front runner for director or a screenplay?
I did think of you when I heard about this movie. And I should specify that it's 3.5 hours plus a 15-minute intermission.
Yes.
So the 3.5 hours is just the movie, and there's apparently an intermission halfway through that all the critics really appreciated, both in terms of like, because I think it's Richard Lawson from Vanity Fair who was like, it was great to have a break and go pee and stuff, but it was also really nice because it like made the movie feel like an event in a way that maybe it wouldn't have if we just had to sit through the whole thing. Like people, because people could like talk to each other about what they just saw, and it felt more like going to the theater in the stage theater Broadway sense, as opposed to like the movie theater. So I'm excited for that. I mean, the three of us, we were really championing the length of Killers of the Flower Moon, and saying that the runtime, we shouldn't be, we should embrace the runtime and not be afraid of it. So this is really taking that to the next level, I want to say. Okay, so things that I have heard in terms of like Oscar buzz, not just Adrian Brody, but Guy Pearce. So apparently Guy Pearce is incredible in this. I believe the word they used to describe his character is tycoon. So he's like an old-timey tycoon who's just used to getting what he wants or getting whatever he wants with money and stuff like that. So that's exciting.
Wait, Guy Pearce from Alien Covenant featured in our last episode? Yeah, he's actually, here?
This is a secret Prometheus prequel.
Oh my gosh.
Sorry, go on.
He's
really good in LA Confidential, one of my favorite movies.
Guy Pearce is an incredible
Guy
actor.
Pearce is great.
Yeah.
Guy Pearce innocent for what happened in Prometheus and Alien Covenant. No, Guy Pearce is he's really good. Well, he was in a Mayor of Easttown. I don't know if you guys watched that.
He was also very good in that.
I keep turning into TV land, but that was great because it was like, what is he doing here? I guess it's just because he's friends with Kate Winslet and someone else had to drop out, and he's in this very minor role, but is great in it.
And to bring it back to Stephen King famously tweeted that he thought Mayor of Easttown was like one of the best TV shows ever. So. Or he was tweeting along with trying to predict the ending of Mayor of Easttown in a very charming way. I remember, but yeah, Greg, you should be excited. Did you notice which distributor has this This
I
epic
did.
film?
Well, it made me excited because I am going full A24, bro. A reminder for listeners: my birthday is in March, and this being September, I already told my wife I expect my birthday present to be an AAA 24 membership for the year, and she rolled her eyes at me, but I'll get there. Yeah, so I am excited, but that makes me a little nervous because they have a lot this year, and so I'm only nervous that they might save it for next year. And I think we're seeing that play coming out right now with Sing Sing, and I think people have been, particularly Sean Fennessy on Big Picture, has been saying, like, did they make the right call saving it, building buzz? It kind of had a weird rollout and then it disappeared again, but maybe we'll come back out in award season. So I do think it's always disappointing when a movie like this gets a ton of buzz and then you have to wait a whole year. But it wouldn't surprise me just because of how much how crowded the field is starting to feel, but particularly for A24, the best studio of all, and their releases. I also want to say my good buddy Ben, and who sometimes gets this far into podcasts, but probably quit after about 15 minutes. He bought us 2 hats. His hat says "Make movies shorter," and on the back it says 90 minutes including credits. And mine says "Make movies longer," and the back says 3 hours not including credits.
Yeah.
And so I am here for the 3.5-hour movie. We also all just bought tickets to a 3-hour screening of Megalopolis. So,
That's fair.
I think we're there. So, I will just say if we weren't talking about Life of Chuck as the TIFF winner, this is the one that felt to me like it came out of nowhere for critics. People hadn't really clocked this and didn't have it on their short lists of things they had to see. And then it seemed like it had a little bit of a splashy rollout. And then once people saw it, they got very, very excited. So I think that is, to me, the best narrative people can hope for here. And so these first 2 picks kind of show that we are most excited about them because that's the best a studio can do at these events. I don't think you have a music cue for me to say I just rewatched Asteroid City, but I will say Adrian Brody is in that for like 5 minutes, and some critic I listened to talked about, I think it was Joanna Robinson, was like, he is stunningly gorgeous in that film, and he's like styled as a 1950s director, and it's black and white, and he's like pure movie star.
He's basically
And
Marlon Brando in Streetcar Named Desire. Like,
yeah,
that's
and
what he
he's
looks
just
like to
there and
me.
gone. But you're like, what just happened? So, obviously as a Wes Anderson fan, I'm totally into, Adrian Brody, and I'm excited that he's getting buzz on this. And Felicity Jones, my Oscar hot take on her is she has terrible taste in which movies she picks, right? Like, in the long run, something like The Basis of Sex seems terrible, and people don't remember Theory of Everything well, even though in the moment people were really into that movie. But those kind of Oscar baity roles, I never even saw The Aeronaut. I don't even know what she was doing at that point. But I do think, again, she's somebody I like and could use a win, just a very serious contention role, because she clearly is in that type of movie, even if not good ones.
There was, so in addition to Adrian Brody and Guy Pearce, there was Felicity Jones can get in for supporting actress, which maybe was people riding that wave of just sort of like, I love this movie, it's going to get this and this and this and this and this. I mean, they were saying it could get a bunch of technical nominations and challenge Dune Part 2 for a lot of those awards, and I that'll be interesting to see. Again, if it comes out this year, I think that Greg's point's a good one. This might end up being something that's held back for next year, for all the like worry and concern about how there's not any movies. At least A24 suddenly has like 5 or 6 movies that all look like they have some real candidacy in them, and so do they want to hold it back? But then I wonder if they're looking and saying, well, that's what they did with Killers of the Flower Moon, and they got the nominations but couldn't get over the hump. They're not going to beat the allegations that it's too much in line with that movie, which critics loved and had its audience, but didn't really fully connect and take off with the wider public to the degree that it got it into the winner's circle.
I'm inclined to say, and I hate saying this, but this is bad news for Sing Sing, because just it is possible that they hold it until next year, but I feel like this reception of it has been so positive from critics that it would almost be foolish of them to not try to capitalize on that. Because think about like the lineup. We don't know what the lineup. We three of us don't know what the lineup is for award season next year. But I keep hearing from everybody that this is like a thinner year, just by virtue of like the strikes and like all the other stuffs that we always reference as like messing up movies, like production and stuff like that. That for them to hold it next year could be much more competitive, and so I don't know. Yeah, it's tricky. We should also mention that for Best Director, this Brady Corbett won the Silver Lion, which is the Best Director award at the Venice Film Festival, where it premiered, I believe. So it's good news for him. Bad news for Denis Villeneuve.
I mean,
who might get shut out again.
I'm just looking at the releases that A24 has had. I mean, Civil War, I saw the TV Glow. Those were sort of on the outskirts of maybe Oscar contention. But then you get down Sing Sing, A Different Man, Heretic, probably not, Baby Girl. Like there's stuff, and then also Queer, which hasn't been dated yet. But I mean, I'm giving away potential movies we might talk about here. But like, there's a few of those movies that have seem to have strong candidates in categories that The Brutalist would also be in. So then it's like, are they going to really try to push Coleman Domingo, Daniel Craig, and Adrian Brody as Best Actor? They could try, but they're not still, even though, Greg loves them. He hasn't subscribed yet to that thing. So they're not a big studio. They're lacking that, whatever it is, $80 that would allow them to cover 3 actors. But, so yeah, is that going to be like, it doesn't seem like the answer to that is let's hold The Brutalist to when there's going to be like 10 major directors releasing another movie in 2025. The answer might be maybe Sing Sing or Queer just doesn't get the push that it would have had, it seemed, just a couple weeks ago.
That doesn't sound wrong to me. We'll maybe get to that movie. I'm leaning towards they hold Queer because I think there's still some hope for challengers if it's not a crowded field with Lucas movies.
Sure.
All right, Greg, who's your winner?
Who is my winner, Jen? It's all of us because we love movies. No, but first, old business. I did also remember Stand By Me is also a Stephen King non-horror novella.
That's right.
So there's really good pedigree here. So sorry to bring up old business for that.
No,
you guys are both forgetting The Running Man, which is not horror. It's just a science fiction movie. That's an incredible Arnold Schwarzenegger movie from the 80s that I'm very confident Greg wouldn't like. But
I haven't seen it.
But it is, it's really good. And that's from one of King's Richard Bachman ones where he was releasing things outside of his genre in under a pen name. So yeah, he's got a lot of stuff out there. And since we're here, his like memoir about writing is one of the best books about writing that exists on writing. I believe it's called.
I used his section about passive voice every year in my class. It slays with students every time.
I have my copy of On Writing signed by Stephen King because he's just hanging around and I can just see him anytime. That's how New England works for all you West Coasters.
Go to the left field box seats at any home game and you can find Stephen King.
Just don't say you're from Fox News.
Which I have never, I don't collect signed books to make money, but I was just looking up, maybe I'll order the If It Bleeds collection, and somebody has a signed copy up for $2,100. Good luck to you. You can say whatever price you want. I don't think you're going to get $2,100 for a lesser King book signed. So look, I'm basic, and even though it's a cop out, I gotta go with my hype draft pick because I think Nickel Boys is a winner. It sounds to me like there were some surprising aspects of Nickel Boys premiere that may actually endanger its chances to be like a Best Picture winner. But it sounds like it's good, and I'm really excited that it didn't disappoint. So just to run down the basics, if people don't remember from the hype draft, Nickel Boys is a film based on a phenomenal Colson Whitehead novel, which I cannot recommend more highly. It's definitely one of my favorite books of all time. And it is a story about two boys that are incarcerated at a home for boys in Florida. And it is framed by the narrative of the discoveries of this abuse that occurred much later in time, looking back at that. So the reason why it's incredible is something that you need to discover for yourself. So I can't spoil that. But I will say that part of the unusual buzz it got out of these festivals is that there is a lot of first-person camera work. And while I am not positive, I have a pretty good guess as to why they might have done that. And I am more intrigued, though I think it's perhaps not necessary. I can see some reasons. So I'm intrigued about what's going on here. So starring in this, apparently in a supporting role, is Ingenue Ellis, who, for my money, was the best part of If Beale Street Could Talk. And of course, we all remember was nominated for King Richard, one of PT's favorite movies from that year. So I think this is, and also on this list is Daveed Diggs. And we're not going to get into the full scuttlebutt of the issue, but I will say, I think Daveed Diggs is the reason you should still love Hamilton. And he has yet to get that kind of big break that I feel like he deserves, right? He's kind of always around. He's usually a pretty good part of a lot of movies. He kind of did a spell in I'm just playing the teacher in a family movie wearing a tasteful sweater vest. I think he played that role on a TV show, maybe Kimmy Schmidt, something like that. So I think it's time for him to get an exciting role, and so I'm glad he's in this, and there's potential there. So I hoped that Nickel Boys would be good, and I would say it is a winner because it sounds like it does not disappoint. Blind Spotting, that he was responsible for getting off the ground and was kind of a showcase for him. It's a really divisive movie, I think. I really liked it, but it does build to a showcase of his freestyling, which I think if you were on the backside of the Hamilton backlash, you were like, no more of this. But I thought it was a pretty good movie. I haven't watched the show that continued that story, but that's where I'm sitting with Daveed Diggs and Nickel Boys.
He was, I can confirm, he was in fact in 3 episodes of Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt. So good job. So the thing, the scuttlebutt, to bring it back to Little Mermaid. Sorry,
Ooh.
Greg. No one's gonna understand why that's funny because it's from 50 episodes ago. But anyway, the word on the street is that this isn't really gonna be an Oscar contender for any of the acting categories because of the first person aspect of it, because it's just the camera never shows any of these characters really, especially the 2 main characters, in a way that kind of conventionally showcases their acting, right? It's kind of a lot of voiceover work with them looking at stuff. So but I will say that I think it's Eric Anderson from Awards Watch really made a big point to explain that this movie, the stylistic choice to do first person really is tied to the themes of the book in terms of the subjectivity of these 2 characters and race and representation, and the idea that we the viewers are forced by this movie to experience everything through their eyes and as they saw it, as opposed to to go back to, we mentioned American Fiction as a TIFF winner. That movie is wrestling with the idea of representation of Black history and stuff like that. And I think it sounds like Ramel Ross, the director, is specifically trying to adapt the book in a way that makes the visual language of it part of the theme and kind of the messaging of the book. I don't know. I haven't read the book though. Greg has, so I don't know if that rings true in terms of what you've read in the book at all.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth noting the director has had previous success as a documentary filmmaker, and I've heard brings a lot of that sensibility to this, which makes sense as the story of kind of uncovering a truth in a in a prison-like setting. boy, yes, I cannot wait till I can talk openly about this. But, I keep banging this drum and making this joke about the underground LTR podcast, reading group. But if you are somebody who is interested in seeing this movie, I cannot recommend this book enough. I mean, I think Colson Whitehead is one of the best writers we have working today, between Underground Railroad and this book. And so go, go, go. And he came up in our last episode because he once sang the song from Beetlejuice to me. So we're just keeping the theme alive.
So many references to past episodes.
It's true.
That's how you know we made it.
This is a real legacy episode. And the folks don't even know all the parts that got cut out. But I mean, you guys have systematically taken down every point I have about this movie, except that I'll say the trailer for it came out, so you can see a trailer. And I watched the trailer and I was like, oh, it's all in first person. I don't like that. And then everything I read and heard about it was people being like, don't be afraid of it being in first person. It's actually incredible. It's a really good choice. So that's they're I always like it when they, especially when a movie is made about young Black men, that they address my concerns about the filmmaking. So that's very important. I should be centered, but it's very exciting, and I think it's. I don't know. I mean, I'm very bad about reading books anyway, so I don't know if I'll read the book before it comes out. But I have it, so I can read it when it comes out. After the movie comes out, I'll read it after the movie and see how I feel on that side of it.
The first person POV may be the thing that holds it back from Oscar success. I'll just say, because it sounds like that it might be too unconventional for a lot of the Academy, because it is what kind of makes it. It's both what makes it transcendent as a viewing experience, but you have to kind of be on board with that as a stylistic choice. I think it was Ann Thompson of IndieWire was kind of saying, yeah, if people we're trained to recognize movies as shot, reverse shot oriented, and this actively resists that people might reject it without giving it a chance, sort of like PT was saying, yes. When he saw the trailer. So that's just something to keep in mind. That might make the difference between it being kind of like a best picture, lots of nominations, versus like adapted screenplay or something,
And I'm just clarifying for the Zoom chat, all my funny faces are simply because you guys just have no idea how good this is. Like, you just don't know and how it fits
we'll read the
all
book
together. It all makes sense to me. And I want to put up the string and connect the thumbtacks with you all once this movie comes out.
I tried to get my book club to do this at some point in the next couple of months, and either people had already read it or they were like, no thanks. It was even worse when I tried to pitch Conclave, and they looked at me like I had 5 heads, and they were like, why would we read this airport novel? Wow. That's about popes. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, I need to have an excuse to read these books for Oscar season. You don't understand. And everyone's like shaking their heads.
So Jen's book club is reading The Wild Robot, and everybody should congratulate them. They're going to have a great time.
So they're reading Queer by William S. Burroughs.
Actually, for real, as I was putting together our massive spreadsheet of all these movies, I noticed more than average, there seemed to be so many adaptations of books. Like, there usually are a lot anyway, but this seems higher than normal. So I don't know what that means or anything like that, but that probably means the adapted screenplay this year is going to be crazy.
Or maybe a bunch of these movies won't be very good, and then it won't matter.
That's
true. Or won't be good.
This is the time where anything's possible still, PT.
But Jen,
you have to hold on to the moment.
But we're pivoting.
All these movies could be good.
But we're moving to our loser round, Jen.
That's true.
I was trying to set you up.
Oh, that was a pretty good segue. Sorry, I ruined it. I respect the segue. All right. So, now I have to pick a loser. Okay. So we've mentioned this movie actually a couple of times. And so I think this is a good one for me to pick because it is like a follow-up to a conversation we started to have, and I would have commented on earlier, but I wanted to save it for my pick. And that is Luca Guadagnino's Queer. One of the other, as we mentioned earlier, A24 acquisitions during this film festival season. It premiered at Venice. People were very excited about Daniel Craig with long Tom Cruise hair, and people are just excited about Luca Guadagnino. But the kind of takeaway from me processing all of the reactions and reviews is that two things. One is that this movie is just like that people aren't going to find it challenging for the content, but because it's like surrealist. It's Luca Guadagnino's most surrealist movie. Apparently the third act is like they go to South America and are doing drugs and it's hallucinatory, and no one, and like half the people who saw it were like, that's amazing. And the other half were like scratching their heads like, I don't understand this movie anymore. So it is kind of one of the ones that got the most polarizing. Like, I think because of Luca Guadagnino and riding off the high of Challengers, that a lot of people were the most hopeful about this movie, that they were the most excited. Kind of like all of the sort of like preview episodes of podcasts that I listened to were all like, yeah, this movie, it's a Luca Guadagnino movie with Daniel Craig called Queer. Like, we're so excited to see it. And if you do the delta of that versus the actual reactions, which were so split, of some people really appreciated this movie and thought it was a really good meditation on unrequited love and like, obsession and desire, and like it portrayed this like kind of sort of semi-abusive relationship between Daniel Craig and Drew Starkey, who I didn't know, but apparently is very famous because of Outer Banks, which is a Netflix show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so the plot of the movie is that Daniel Craig is playing an American expat in Mexico City, and he kind of meets and becomes infatuated with this younger man who is kind of like, it feels a lot like what's the Jude Law's character in Ripley, Dickie Greenleaf, right?
Yes.
That he like his character is like kind of has some things in common in terms of hot and cold, and like sometimes he's adoring and sometimes he doesn't pay attention to you and stuff like that. So apparently Daniel Craig is amazing in it. It sounds like if they put it out this year, he's probably at the bottom of the A24 roster in terms of acting performances, and just in terms of what they're going to campaign. Because the comparison I heard was like, well, in the same year as Challengers, the Academy's going to go for Challengers and then reject this because this is like the weirder movie of the two.
It's interesting, the thing that like as the sort of commentary was coming out, that like, oh, maybe Queer isn't it, like maybe it's not going to actually land with the wider Academy. I was maybe strangely reminded of Jason Reitman's 2018, when he had two movies that came out. One came out in the spring, one came out in the fall. And the spring movie was Tully, which starred Charlize Theron, was written by Diablo Cody. So his third movie with Diablo Cody, and second of those movies starring Charlize Theron. And people were like, yeah, this one's a little weird, but he's got a movie coming out that's going to be like this big Oscar contender. And it was The Frontrunner, which was his fall movie with like, it was Hugh Jackman's going to get nominated. He's playing Gary Hart. This is going to be incredible. And then that movie came out and people were like, I think we like Tully more. And like, this movie's actually only okay. And I mean, the result was then like nothing got nominated. There was I don't think either of those movies got any nominations out of that. So, maybe there's more time, there's more momentum and energy for Challengers. But it is a sort of similar, Challengers came out and people were like, cool, that's nice. But like, what about Queer? Like, Queer's going to be coming out like down the road. And now that Queer's here, folks are like, maybe Challengers was better. But we are at the point where it's like Daniel Craig or bust seems to be the main buzz for this movie. And then the like light hope that if they do release it this year in the fall, Luca Guadagnino being out and talking and meeting people is going to get Challengers momentum to happen, which if I was the like wagering type on it, I wouldn't feel like that was a great support base for Challengers. But who knows? Maybe it will not repeat that trend of 2018 with Jason Reitman.
I'm wondering right now, and I can Google, but I started Googling at the wrong moment. Has Challengers hit like a free streaming service? Is that on Amazon or something yet?
Yeah, I think so.
Because it feels to me like it never got that second bump that usually comes when it arrives on a Netflix or a something. Because it does feel like while it was an early movie this year, there was a little buzz around it. And then it's like after that initial couple weeks, it kind of disappeared, even though it was a very successful movie. And I think all three of us enjoyed it to varying degrees. So yeah, maybe this could help it. I got to set the record straight. I think Daniel Craig looked crazy because that's Benoit Blanc in the third Knives Out movie, needs the long hair. So I think he might look more normal in this movie. He also got a lot of play in my text message change because he was dubbed to be wearing weekend dad gear at the film festival, which we can all pull off with just a simple button down and an old pair of jeans. You think about going from him coming out of the water in his tiny bathing suit in the first of his James Bond, Casino Royale, to that. It's like, man, that's where we've been. That's the journey we've been on. Everything I heard about this movie, you all have basically said, but I just heard it might push things too far to be palatable to Academy voters. And our normal conversations will be starting up again, guessing how conservative the Academy is, how international it is. But it sounds like the buzz to me sounds like it's the kind of movie like a very progressive Academy voter would want to support, but is maybe like, but I can't. It's beyond the pale even for that in terms of where it goes and how much it shows of sex, drugs, and so on.
So while you were talking, I checked on Challenger's streaming status. Apparently, September 19th is when it goes to Amazon Prime Video. It's only been on VOD, which I just assumed it had at some point gone. But you're right. Like, it never had that sort of second wind. And I think this tells me they're still holding out for an Oscar campaign, because the timing of this seems very purposeful to be like, hey, fall film festival season, like, we're still out here and everyone else can watch it now. So which I think is the thing that Amazon's last Oscar play failed to do, right? They did that too early in during the summer or at the beginning of the summer, I feel like, is when Air went on streaming.
And then Saltburn was too late. Like, Saltburn happened.
Yeah.
Like,
so so I think it might be a good year for Luca Guadagnino, but for the wrong movie, or like not wrong movie, but not the movie everyone thought. Hence why it is my loser pick, because everyone was like, kind of like, oh, like, this isn't the crazy Oscar contender we thought it would be.
So when we're talking about losers, do we want losers like this movie might not be good, or losers like this movie might not do as well?
Either one, I think.
Academy conversations.
Either.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go with.
We have a broad and inclusive definition of loser on the
show. We welcome many losers here on the Long Take Review. Well, I'm going to go with the what I had, like, soft loser and hard loser on my list. I'm going to go with a soft one, where it doesn't sound like the movie, will not be enjoyable, but I think that its positioning now, after the other movies came out, it's kind of cramped and it doesn't have many avenues. And that's The Piano Lesson, the adaptation of the latest adaptation of an August Wilson play, produced by Denzel Washington, directed by his son Malcolm, if I'm remembering correctly, starring Denzel's other son, the director's brother, John David Washington. And it's supposed to be really good. Like, people are like, this is the Fences and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. They were like, those are great movies. Those felt like filmed plays. Like, they had some cinematic elements to them, but they were really kind of still contained to their locations in the way that a film set does. And this goes in a very different direction in terms of how they represent the narratives and the monologues and the stories that are told. Like, it visually shows these things that are normally just someone, in the play, I should say normally, but in the stage version, someone standing and talking about this, but the movie gets to go and show them. And people were like, no, this is really good. But it, like, kind of ends up stuck with, like, people were a lot more excited about the Nickel Boys as a story about, like, not to be like, there can only be one movie about Black people that folks care about. But it seemed like those were
the Academy sometimes does that.
They were sort of jostling for similar lanes here. And the sort of hype for a while has been, if the choices that they make are really successful, this could be, adapted screenplay, this could be director, this could get into picture. And it seems like people are like, then, if people are enjoying those, the people who would enjoy the changes that are made to this are the kind of people who would be like, but Nickel Boys did it even better. Like Nickel Boys did it more and it's more successful. And then the big sort of heavyweight potential nominee that's been rumbling for a couple of years on this is Samuel L. Jackson in supporting actor, who was nominated, I believe, didn't win, but nominated for a Tony playing this role on Broadway, and has been long overdue for, I believe this would only be his second nomination after Pulp Fiction. And he hasn't won. And now I didn't look it up, so I don't know if he's gotten an honorary award. I don't think he has. But people are like, he needs a career win, and this could be it. But apparently the rearranging of how things are structured really diminishes his character. And he, like, the things that they're like, well, we show these scenes that are told on the stage, he's the character that tells them. So instead of a bunch of his monologues, there are scenes that come in. And so he ends up with just like these dialogue scenes that are, just not as prominent. And he's great. And again, like, this is why I wanted to, not call it like this terrible catastrophe, but that, like, for the awards chances is sort of like, this is probably not going to go anywhere, especially as this is a Netflix movie that Netflix has, like A24, two very similar studios. But Netflix has a lot of things that are coming out that they could push, and that this might end up falling by the wayside. So there's some hype and a little pop, maybe a little makeup call time for Danielle Detweiler, who people are saying she's the standout supporting performance. So she may get a nomination out of this, but outside of that, it's probably not going anywhere. And even that's far from guaranteed.
So Samuel L. Jackson does have an honorary Oscar in 2021, which wasn't that long ago. So I feel bad now, but I don't remember that.
Strange time.
Yeah. The other thing actually is the biggest buzz I've heard for acting nominations coming out of this movie is Ray Fisher. Apparently he's really a standout performance, and I think is benefiting from, everyone assumed he was just the guy who played Cyborg in the Zack Snyder Justice League movies and was suing, his notoriety was that he was suing Warner Brothers, right? Over those movies or something, right? And so everyone was like, oh, Ray Fisher, like, he's really good in this. And so, that's another narrative actually that could work well for an Oscars campaign. In general, I'd say that the Washington family, like the Denzel Washington and family adaptations of these August Wilson works, do have a really strong history with acting nominations, but not really much. And then adapted screenplay, but not anything beyond that. So, like, not even maybe Best Picture. I can't even remember. Fences was nominated for.
Fences
actually,
made it
yeah,
to
I guess
Best
both
Picture.
of them were. Fences made it to Best Picture, and Ma Rainey, but they weren't really in contention for winning ever, I think, is the idea, because they kind of like didn't have the full suite of nominations.
Ma Rainey's was not a Best Picture nominee.
That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah. I was like, one of them missed.
Actor, famously losing actor, and then actress, it won costume, makeup, and hairstyling, and then also got a production design nomination.
Well, I'm slow on the trigger because I was about to say the Ray Fisher thing, and then when Jen's told that, I'm like, oh, but I'll talk about Ma Rainey, and I also missed the moment on that one. So I will say the other you only leave me with my dumb things, which is to say, oh, so the narrative tonight is that Samuel L. Jackson was standing by a window about to win a Best Supporting Actor, and some Skywalker knocked him out of the window and stole his award, perhaps. I often wonder if these Denzel Washington, August Wilson projects are going to be something people look back on and be like, wow, we just missed that one of our best actors was taking one of our best drama writers, and just nobody got on board with these. And I'm going to just swing for a big thesis there, which is to say, I think part of the problem is that they are Netflix movies and they feel disposable. We don't think we can squeeze in an episode about it, but I think PT and I were both recently blown away by Rebel Ridge. And I will say that my reaction to that was like, oh, it was a Netflix movie, so I assumed it would be bad, and it was good. And like I don't think anybody is necessarily saying this one looks bad, but it's like the kind of general taint of Netflix just does these by algorithm kind of gets stuck to a film like this, which is totally unfair, and I think are being created with a lot of love and are kind of real special adaptations that I fear are doomed to like grad school classes on American drama or high school English classes to be seen there and not much else, and I think that's a real shame. And because I just said Tom Hiddleston was kind of due, I don't think Samuel L. Jackson really gets like remembered fondly for Nick Fury, and some of that might be the last time he played Nick Fury there. Or wait, no, he played it in the Marvels after Secret Invasion.
Yes.
But when he was showcased as Nick Fury, it was such bad material that I think there's a taint on that role. But I do think it will be a shame if he's another actor who doesn't get recognized in his career based on, I always lose track, but I assume he's ahead of Harrison Ford in the top grossing film star of all time, because I think Harrison had taken it back, I think somewhere early in the Marvel run, but if Samuel L. Jackson gets included in all the Marvel movies he appears for one scene in, I think it's not even close at this point, I would imagine.
Right.
So, so I think, obviously he can cry in his tons and tons of money, but it would be a shame because he is a fine actor and his roles are so iconic. It'd be a shame that he doesn't get one, but maybe it's not this one.
Greg, I have very bad news for you. Harrison Ford is not in the top 10 anymore.
Oh, he's had a rough few years.
I mean, it's all
Marvel.
It's all Marvel, plus Zoe Saldana, she's number 4. She has Avatar and Star Trek, and then Tom Cruise, who has Missions Impossible and Top Guns. And
wait, but Zoe Saldana is Marvel too, right? You sounded like you pulled her out of Marvel.
Of the Galaxy.
Yeah.
I was looking at the top grossing film, and it's because it's Avatar is how it's listed here, and all the Marvel people have Endgame, which she is in Endgame. She's not in Infinity War, right? No. She's in both.
I mean, I wasn't gonna go this way, but I'll take the transition of Zoe Saldana, who had a very splashy performance, but I don't know. I'm curious. I guess being who I am, I'll call it a soft loser because I can speak to that. But I felt like Emilia Perez got a little bit of a like, what the heck is this thing? But all the people in it are incredible. And so I'll let Jen correct the record if that's not the buzz she felt. It's been curious that I, in my project to follow the most popular films on Netflix, Emilia Perez is the one that got the highest of the, like, you can only see this at festivals right now, and has lingered within the top 100, which I think is both that it appeared at maybe all 3 of these festivals or a lot of festivals, but seems to be like it's getting around and people are seeing it, even though it's there. But as I recall, it is a Netflix film. Sorry, I wasn't expecting to talk about this, so I didn't go to the spreadsheet. It is a Netflix film. It's not that far away. It got an interesting kind of distinction by having the 4 female leads all win Best Actress at Cannes back in May. And I think it seems evenly split to me if the buzz is really on Zoe Saldana or on Selena Gomez. But the Zoe Saldana narrative I heard is like, wow, she can really act. Where has she been? And the answer is she's been green and she's been blue and she has not been allowed to have a good part, which I think speaks to this kind of terrible moment for actresses in Hollywood where you're not the young ingenue and they have no idea what to do with you until you can be like a matriarch figure again. So yeah, Jen, what's the buzz you heard on this one?
So, I mean, there's a lot of love for this movie, I think. And it did get its second runner-up at the TIFF Audience Award. But it won a bunch of Cannes, right? It got the Best Actress. And I think now I'm just cheating and looking at our spreadsheet, which I made, so I guess it's not really cheating. But it won the jury prize, which is second place at Cannes, I believe. PT has a better. After Palme d'Or, I lose track of which one is which.
That might you said wrong. That and I don't know it. I'll look it up while you talk.
Well, usually you're the one who's like explaining, oh, Palme d'Or is first place, and then I don't know, you've done that before. Anyway.
I have, but I don't remember it now. So
The
I'll try to figure it out.
The director, Jacques Audiard, won the Silver Medallion at Telluride. And Silver Medallion, it's like less of like a competitive award, but more a preordained. It's like a tribute that they set up beforehand. So he got one of those at Telluride. And so the criticism I've heard is that this is a lot of movie because it is a musical, it's a crime drama, it is a trans story, like, because the plot is that Zoe Saldana plays a lawyer who gets recruited by the Mexican cartel to help a Mexican cartel leader who is played by Carla Sofia Gascon, a trans actress, and she asks for help with sex reassignment surgery. And so it's like there's just a lot of moving parts to the movie in terms of like both genre and plot. And apparently Zoe Saldana does a great job singing and dancing. So it really is a true musical. And so like I think a big question mark is like sometimes some of that, all of that together works for some people and doesn't for others. And so again, it's this theme of like split reviews and responses. Some people are way into this movie, other people are like, I don't know, that was a bit much. But in general, it seems very exciting. You can watch like a little teaser for it, and I don't know, it looks good to me. It's like but I really like musicals, so that's always a plus for me. Whereas it might be a minus for some other people. But I like Narcos, but make it like on Broadway. Like, I don't know. Like that.
Narcos live.
Yeah, I don't know. It sounds good. This was one of the other ones too that had so many screenings at Toronto that people were like, oh, they're definitely trying to game the system in terms of like if the more people see it, the more likely they are to vote for it for the audience award.
Right.
So
yeah. So having dropped the ball on the thing, I did double check. It's Palme d'Or is like first place at Cannes, Grand Prix is second place, and then jury prize is third place.
Okay,
that's not how they like officially designate it, but that is the sort of in the official awards. That's the order of them. And Emilia Perez won the jury prize. I will say that I feel like this was. I understand Greg bringing this up because it was out of Cannes felt like, oh, this is like everyone's going to love this movie. Like in the way that The Brutalist feels now of just like, oh my God, the critics are like, you got to see this movie. This is going to be absolutely incredible. And now more people saw it. And there's more people that were like, no, like I actually didn't care for that. Which, maybe is not like, is that reflective of just the sort of the backlash of the hype of, I heard this movie so good and now I went in with like my suspicions or, my eyebrow was raised before the lights went down. Or is it that it's divisive because it's a musical and it's trying to cover too much? The only thing I will add is I feel like begun hearing, and I did not listen and gorge on as much film festival commentary as I know my colleagues did here, but I was starting to hear the like, is this this story of a trans Mexican woman, the story to be told by this white French guy? Like, why is this why did he write this his movie? Why is he the one who wrote this movie? Why is this his movie? And so, that's if who knows if that gets traction or not. And I always get wary when I'm like, is this like super early campaigning of people like planting stories or planting thoughts into the discourse to try to turn folks away? Like some other Netflix movie is like, don't look at Emilia Perez, like come look at my movie and or whatever, or a competing studio. But I was hearing that, and I do think that that's another potential strike against it is the like, why are we not hearing from the writer? Why isn't the writer director someone who could embody, who has this lived experience, even if the story is great and told well? So I don't know.
Netflix also seems, maybe to a lesser degree, but seems to also have the problem that A24 now has, where their slate is, everything on their slate is competing against each other. Because I know over and over again, critics have been like wringing their hands about like, well, what are they now? They've acquired Maria, which is a movie we haven't talked about yet, but Angelina Jolie playing a famous opera singer. That feels like Oscar bait. Like, what does that mean for Emilia Perez? Like, so, and like, is the actress the category? Are they going to be too crowded for Netflix because they have these 2 movies now that both have very strong female performances in them? So I don't know. I think there's going to be a bunch of category fraud either way. I've heard that Selena Gomez really is a true supporting performance, but Zoe Saldana should be a co-lead with Carla Sofia Gascon, but one of them might edge out the other, and the other one will be forced to go into supporting, which no one will be happy about either way. Like, regardless of which one makes it into lead and which one is supporting, people are not going to be happy about it. So that's going to be fun. To have to listen to that discourse go on and on during the award season.
There have been times in Oscars past when like there were 2 lead performances nominated from one movie. It feels like such a campaign, kind of cynical move to be like, no, this person is actually, especially when it's, not, it's bad enough when it's like, it's a story of a husband and wife and the wife becomes supporting actress because she's just the wife.
Right.
Like that's frustrating enough, but it's just like, the two guys from Network both got nominated for lead. It can happen. So
it really depends on how confident Netflix is, because oftentimes that category fraud happens because the studio is like, well, we're not confident that both of them can make it into this category, so we have to split them up so they're not competing with each other. Mm-hmm. So I don't know, we'll see. But overall, it seems to be buzzing along. So I think it's here to stay, especially after being a runner-up in the TIFF Audience Award, and more and more people are going to see it. It's coming out in November. It'll be on Netflix November 13th. So
theaters November 1st for a couple
for
weeks.
A classic short Netflix run in theaters.
I was gonna say for the real ones, we'll see it in the theater. That's who we are. Yeah.
All right, who's next?
It's you. Back to winners.
Oh, we finished. Okay. Oh, that's right, because Greg's was. Wait, we were really talking about this one as a loser?
Kind of. I use the transition. Okay. So sure. I said it's soft. It's coming out a little softer than it went in, but That's fair. Think everything we just said is a plus in that column.
Right. I'm very sorry for introducing this soft hard dynamic.
Yeah, we're stuck with it now.
It's not. It doesn't
sounds ewy.
Now that I hear it.
All right. So actually, what makes the most sense for me then to pick is Anora, because I think, though that was the other film out of Cannes, and I think it's a good one to put next to Emilia Perez, because Emilia Perez has like split reactions. Some people are really into it. Other people are kind of like, this is too much. Anora does not have that. Everybody loves Anora across the board. I've barely heard a bad thing about this movie. So this is, we did talk about this on a previous episode. I can't really remember which one, but Sean Baker, director of the Florida Project and Red Rocket more recently, people have a lot of love for him. And then he came out and won the Palme d'Or for this movie, Anora. I remember we kind of made fun of the premise when we were originally talking about this and hadn't seen it. Like, didn't really know anything else about it, but it's a New York stripper falls in love with a Russian oligarch's son, and all hell breaks loose when his parents find out. So it's unclear how much of I think this is it seems at first like it's a romance, but apparently everyone keeps comparing it to Uncut Gems. I don't know if either of you have heard this, that it's like this high, intense, stressful, potentially violent, like thrill ride. And I was just like, what? Oh, okay. That's not what I thought it was based on the description. But this is a neon film. So it's really just kind of like charging ahead and has not lost any steam since it won the Palme d'Or. It's the first runner-up for the TIFF Audience Award. Rave reviews all across the board. People were like, I can't wait for you to see Anora. The critics just keep telling that to each other back and forth in all the things they listen to. But yeah, so, and like Mikey Madison for Best Actress apparently is like, everyone's like, oh yeah, that's happening. Did either of you watch the trailer for this? Because recently the trailer came out.
Jen, I watched it next to you.
I know that, but I'm just setting it up for you.
I've seen it many times. I think this is in heavy rotation at AMC all of a sudden. The only kind of similar movie I'd say is getting heavier trailer rotation would be the Jesse Eisenberg movie that the name I'm forgetting.
A Real Pain.
A Real Pain. That is attached to almost every movie I go see. But now that we finally cleared Speak No Evil out of the way, I expect Anora will start being the main trailer I see. I'm not a Sean Baker guy in that I haven't even tried. I have no feelings either way. I've heard good things about Florida Project. Both are on Canopy, so I plan to watch these. Again, my buddy Ben, who I mentioned earlier, he and I have a tradition where we go see the weirdo sicko movies together. So like we saw Infinity Pool together. We saw Beau is Afraid together. So like the movies you would like don't want to go to with your wife and you want just another weirdo to sit with. I pitched him like 4 coming out this fall, and when I got to Anora, he's like, "Oh, that's the one. We're going to see that one. Like that's our jam." So, and I honestly don't know if that's the correct read on it. I mean, part of that is like stripper crime families. Like there's some kind of seedy stuff in the mix, but I don't know. I really like Mikey. Sorry, Mikey Madison. She, I mean, it wasn't a big part, but it was very memorable in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. She kind of lit the screen on fire, if you will. And then she was on the Pamela Adlon show, the title of which I'm forgetting, but
Better Things.
Better Things, and was really good as kind of often just given like angsty daughter material, but she made it genuine and solid. So that is a person who has been low key on my radar, so I'm excited for her to get a big shot like this.
She also had a small, not relatively small role in the reboot of Scream that came out. It was technically Scream 5, but it was just called Scream. She's one of the like main crew of people in that, and it was good. It was good in it. So yeah, I mean, I think this looks great. I'm really excited for it. Again, the opposite of Amelia Perez. A good transition there, Jen, was that like it's only been strong reactions and people being like, "Yep, what everyone said was true. Like this is good. This is you should go and enjoy it." What I will say is the only Sean Baker movie that I've seen is Tangerine, which is his one before the Florida Project, and it's very low budget and feels like a potentially similar thing, which is it's two sex workers. Well, two sex workers who are together. One of them is trying to find her boyfriend / pimp because she's mad at him, and that's the whole movie. And it's just them walking around LA trying to find this guy, and it's great. And it is like I can see how a bigger version of that with like more stuff like ratchets up the tension even more, because there is tension in it, but it's also very funny, and it also like has this great like character development. So yeah, I'm really pumped for this, and I think the Mikey Madison's very strong New York accent in the trailer is really warms my heart. It's just sort of like, yep, this sounds like a truly authentic character that has been built up here. So yeah, we saw at a recent screening. It was a Red Band trailer. A lot of F-bombs get dropped in that version. I don't know if Greg is getting a cleaned up version. I don't even know what a cleaned up version would look like. So it's a good time, and I'm pumped for this one. I'm excited.
Yeah, amazing. See, the only even remotely negative discourse that has taken place about this movie is there's some rumblings that it is going to be the quote unquote film bro movie of the year.
Sure.
Like I heard multiple critics kind of like jokingly be like, yeah, the skinny 27-year-old film bros are really like, you got to see Anora. I think that might have been Richard Lawson. That sounds sarcastic enough to be Richard Lawson, but yeah, there was that's the only thing is people being like, this is the broy film bro pick.
Which, I mean, that was Oppenheimer last year. That was the film bro pick last year, and it still won Best Picture and was very successful. So this could carry forward. And there feels like there's such a heart to Sean Baker's stuff that it is film bro-y, but it also isn't exclusively that. Like I think that when it expands out from just being in a bro zone, it will be I think it'll be pretty welcomed. But speaking of a bro zone, I'm gonna say for my next winner, coming from a director I highlighted earlier for his earlier Oscar misfires, I'm gonna say Saturday Night. I feel like the chatter around this was it was positive, which was great to hear, but the like Oscar pundit stuff that I was seeing very much surprised me about like, oh, like Saturday Night, like crowd pleaser, see it with a big group, like the audience absolutely loved it. This is gonna get like 8 or 9 nominations. And it's just like, wait, what? And they're just like, yeah, it's right in the nostalgia wheelhouse of the like a lot of the Academy voters. You have 50 years of Saturday Night Live history. So really, it's like everyone from like youngest voter up through like 75-year-olds have like deep connections to this, or not everyone, but a lot of them have deep cultural connections to this institution of Saturday Night Live. And it's like they balance, again, the reports are they balance the sort of impressions of the famous people on the, either on the show or people who became famous behind the scenes. Lorne Michaels as sort of the main character being maybe the most prominent one of like, it captures their essence, but also they are characters in this story, and it works, and it's just, it's fun, and it does a good job of everything that it sets out to do. And so suddenly it was like probably going to be, not like Runaway, like it's one of the strong contenders for Best Picture, but like going to be in the bottom 5 there, and like, oh, who knows, maybe some of the, like the guy who plays Chevy Chase or the guy who plays Dan Aykroyd, like they might get like some momentum, and the screenplay and the production design and the some of the costuming of getting all the stuff in that moment. So it feels like it's both like the best version of what you would want, or at least I would want a movie like this to be. Because when I first heard about it, I was just like, no, thank you. Like, I don't need that. I've read Live from New York. I don't need to see a movie of the first, like, I could also just watch the first episode. What are we doing? But I guess it's like a really great behind the scenes show business story. And it also has this like positioning to be this like surprise movie. Maybe 8 is intense, but like, 4 to 6 Oscar nominations, and suddenly it's just like, yeah, this is just sort of chipping away at the at Oscar success. And I think this marks like a baker's dozen movies for Willem Dafoe this year. Am I right? He's just in every movie. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah, well, because I have some actor projects that I'm working on Letterboxd, and Willem Dafoe just keeps like creeping up that I try to focus on a couple actors. Actually, so I slightly misrepresented before. I started the Florida project the other night. I didn't get more than like 15 minutes into it, not for its quality. I just was using it to finish a workout, and I got in the credits, it said Willem Dafoe, and I'm like, no, come on, like here too, like he's everywhere. So setting aside Willem Dafoe, which no one ever should, I am very, very excited for this movie. And the first trailer made me nervous because they have this clunky moment where Don Pardo is mispronouncing Aykroyd and like, isn't it funny, back before they were famous? And that's the kind of shenanigans I'm not up for. I don't want that kind of movie. And so it made me a little nervous. But I will say the music in the trailer, I find myself like singing in my head as I'm walking down the hall a million times now, even though, it's kind of just a little percussion riff. So most exciting for me, I mean, the cast looks really good and has really fun people in it. I've become a big fan of Gabriel LaBelle, which, I've seen criticism that he is far too young for Lorne at this time because Lorne should be in his 40s, I believe. No, that can't be right.
30s.
He's
like early 30s. Yeah.
I was going to say he can't be 90 now as a part of that. But I'll reiterate what PT said or kind of put a different spin on it. So not only is it going to be, there's 50 years worth of fandom, but the fact that it is 50 and it's very likely we're going to have a big celebration special type thing in like February, which would kind of push this nostalgic, if it's already on Peacock by then, I assume Peacock, I don't actually know, like wherever it goes, it feels like it could be just so much of the zeitgeist is celebrating Lorne and celebrating the achievement that this show is, right? We all love it and we hate it and we love to hate it, but like it is a huge achievement. So I think it could be a real push to that. And, if it's nothing but a crowd pleaser, I'm down for a crowd pleaser Saturday Night Live movie. I think it could be really fun.
So we do have to give a shout out to Antonio, who's not here. This was, it was under a different name at the time. It was, I think, SNL 1975, I think it was the original title. But he did pick this in his hype draft. And when he did, I was like, okay. Like, I'm not an SNL connoisseur. Like, I like it. When I see it, I'm always happy, but I don't seek it out necessarily. And I don't really know like a ton of, if you go back to that episode, our hype draft episode, I have trouble naming like the original cast members of SNL. I think PT made fun of me for it at the time.
That sounds like me.
Yeah. And I was like, oh, okay, I guess I don't know anything about this. What sold me on this later, when the trailer came out and as these reactions are coming out, is that it takes place in real time, more or less, in like 90 minutes, and that it is like kind of a never stops sort of one take, but not really one take because it's edited together. How did they put this first episode together? And it gives me lots of Aaron Sorkin back at peak Aaron Sorkin vibes, right? The walk and talks, the chaos, the snappy dialogue. And so
Studio
for that
60.
Reason, yeah. It's like, well, I mean, maybe not that, but like
that's your favorite Aaron Sorkin, right? Studio 60. Yeah.
I was so excited about that show before it came out.
Yeah. So was I. We all were.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I've heard lots of disparaging comparisons of this to Birdman, that it's like trying to be too cute for its own good. The legitimate criticism I have heard, because I probably wouldn't have put this in the winner category, but maybe on the other hand, like it seems like catnip for the Academy, so maybe it kind of like is a net neutral sort of thing, because like there were some critics who came out very harshly and were like, this is an empty fluff movie. It has nothing interesting to say about SNL. It's just here for the good time. But as PT was saying, a lot of people want that good time. So in that sense, it's probably going to do really well. So yeah, I'm excited to see it, but I'm going to try to manage my expectations. It's not going to be like, because it sounds like people were like, this could have been the fun, let's put on a show, isn't this crazy movie, but with more. Like the people who didn't like it wanted more. So
and I could see wanting that of like, is there like the so what of just sort of like, what does all this mean? And that probably would be a better film, but would it actually succeed at what it wants to do? And like, all due respect to Jason Reitman and his co-writer, a.k.a. the writers of Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, who also wrote this movie. Maybe that's not the level they're working on. Maybe they're not trying to get deep and insightful. He has Diablo Cody for that. Like he can do screenplays by her when the time comes. I would like, as a point of order, Antonio did not draft this movie because we didn't think it was coming out this year. He said, this is a movie I want to draft, but I don't know if it's coming out. Can I draft it? And we said, you can.
And we said no.
No, we said you can draft it, but like, if it doesn't come out, it doesn't come out. And then it just doesn't count.
Oh, so we talked him out of doing it.
He switched to,
this is on us.
He switched to other movies. Antonio is an adult. He's a big boy. He made his own choices.
But unfortunately, I did just get a text from Antonio because we talked him out of it. He's not joining us on Long Take Review : Brozone, which is the spinoff that the men of this podcast were planning to do. So it'll be just be D and I in the Brozone.
Our 7-part series just on the Brutalist.
No, it's the 7-part series on how great the male-dominated writers' room of Saturday Night Live was in the 1970s.
I forgot when I was singing the praises of Gabriel about there was a very quiet movie that came out this summer called Snack Shack. That started. It was so fun. And so if you saw Fabelmans and you're like, I don't know, he's just like a wheeling, scheming teenager who's always got a few things in play. And, he and his buddy, I mean, literally the plot of the movie is they put in a bid and get to run the snack shack at the pool. And that's like the highest stakes it gets. But it's very fun. And, I rented it. I think it was a 99-cent rental on iTunes for a little while. So I grabbed that.
It's on Prime now.
Nice.
Oh, nice. I feel like he was born in the wrong decade. Because don't you think if he had been born in the 70s that he'd be like huge in a bunch of 80s movies? You know what I mean? Like... He just has that kind of John Cusack.
He feels like one of the Animal House guys who then is like that guy in a bunch of other movies.
Oh, I was gonna go Michael J. Fox. He feels like a Michael J. Fox,
sure.
Like that lane. But yeah, I think that is right, and they're just not making that kind of movie that often now. But the cast on this runs really deep, and I've heard a lot of praise for the female performers. Again, in thinking of trying to be Gilda Radner or Jane Curtin, that's a tough gig, and obviously men are facing the same thing, the male actors, but I've just heard particular praise that they really nail that. Like PT said, it's an impression, but it's their own thing. So
I will also note, if this is relevant, I only realized this when I last saw the trailer and in the theater, that the person that Cooper Hoffman is playing, who's like the most prominent speaker in the trailer that's out there now, being like, let's punt, let's not do this show live, like we can run the rehearsal, it's going to be fine. That TV executive is the one who fired Norm Macdonald in the 90s because he was friends with OJ and he was mad at how many OJ jokes. And he kept saying, you guys need to make fewer OJ jokes. So then Norm would just do like multiple OJ jokes every week just to piss this guy off. And then he fired him.
The best.
And there's a park off on Storrow Drive named after one of his kids because he's a Boston guy, and sadly one of his kids died in like a plane crash, and so we donated money for like the Esplanade refurbishment. So you always see Teddy Ebersol Park going. It's Dick Ebersol is the guy's name. That's my Boston Norm Macdonald Saturday Night Live background segment, which will be very prominent in Long Take Review Brozone.
Well, and you can often find Stephen King in Teddy Ebersol Park, so it all comes together. He's just hanging out on a bench, reading one of his own books. So. Being
inspired by the story of a dead
child. The story he would write. I mean, we've caught so many of these so far, but I'm gonna go for the other obvious pick for me, which is no surprise to you two. I'm very excited for Conclave now. So I did my homework for Fake Book Club, and I read Conclave, and it is really, really fun. And because I know the cast that's been announced, I can put them into the roles in the book because it's very easy to do that. When you think about a conclave where you have bishops from all over the world, it's like, oh, there's this country and this country and this country, and you can like, oh, I know the cast, and that makes sense. I think this is going to be a deeply silly movie in like the most crowd pleasing way. There's a lot of buzz that it feels a little bit like Agatha Christie in a surprising way. And I think that's kind of a function of the way a conclave works, where you lock them all in a room and, they have complete sequestration. I don't know. And so Sequest the television show. Yeah.
I think it's just well, the verb is sequester. So you're looking for the noun? Is that what the problem is?
Yeah.
I think it's sequestering.
That sounds right.
All right.
I mean, I think just nobody says the noun version of this word.
Yeah. They are sequestered.
This is brought to you by 3 writing professors.
I recently listened to the rewatchables on the Grand Budapest Hotel, and I know we already did Oscar Ferry for that year, but I was like, I should have fought hard for Best Actor for Ralph Fiennes, because it's criminal he doesn't have one, right? He has nominations, but he
Correct.
doesn't have one, and I think if he wins for Conclave, which is a huge if, just noting. Like, it would only happen as a like, hey, we screwed up and you deserve it. But, Ralph Fiennes is always good. I was picturing Gustav in, reading the dialogue of this character. It's actually like a similar role because he's the dean of the cardinals, so he kind of has to keep the conclave going and all that. And there's in the book there's like 5 good twists and turns, and I'll be surprised if they all make it into the movie, but I think it'll be a big kind of what kind of but like a fun wah if they get away with some of the bigger twists. So was already excited for this. Nothing I've heard out of the festivals really dissuades me. Jen, what haven't I heard? Are people disliking it?
So it's one of those things where everyone seems to agree that this movie is fun. Not everyone agrees that this movie is good. So mostly because of apparently some of the twists and turns at the end. The main people who are kind of like, this was fun, but they often point to the ending, being like, I can't tell you what happens at the end because that would be a spoiler, but like, I still don't know what to make of the ending, or like, I don't know how I feel about the ending. So a lot of people have been saying that kind of thing. And I think people were assuming, based on the premise and especially considering the director, Edward Berger, who won several Oscars for All Quiet on the Western Front, a very serious movie about World War I, right? Where it's very dramatic. People were setting their expectations of like, oh, this is going to be this year's Oppenheimer, of like, it will both be exciting and crowd pleasing, but also kind of elevated and awards worthy, prestige, like a prestige movie. It seems like people have come down on that last part where they're like, this is going to be a crowd pleaser. This is going to make tons of money off the old people who still go to movies. But if it does get Oscar traction, it will take that crowd pleaser spot, like almost like the blockbuster spot, as opposed to being a legitimate like contender. Not to say that the blockbusters aren't legitimate contenders, but you know what I mean? Like, in the narrative of like who's in front in the race, at the front of the race, Conclave is going to be towards the back half, right? Because it will get that spot, but will be a crowd pleaser and then can only go so far. So that I think is really interesting. Another criticism I've heard is Isabella Rossellini is criminally underused, but that sounds like that's the book's fault, and that they just did the best they could to include her in the movie.
That's also the Catholic Church's fault, right? Like,
well, yes.
Yeah, like inside the conclave, there are very few women. So, but the fact they got Isabella Rossellini would be the filmmaker's fault. True. So,
right. But I think that's a failure of adaptation potentially, because like I can fast forward to like closer to the Oscars, and the narrative could have been the book basically had no female characters of note. They crafted this amazing role for Isabella Rossellini. Isn't that a great adaptation choice, right? But it sounds like that's not the case. And she like asked for paper clips or something, like, and that's it.
It would be very, very hard to do, since the majority is like in the room locked in.
Right.
So it also, what I didn't mention is I heard a few people saying it's a good allegory for like all elections, because it is like a democratic process that's weird, and this microcosm. So it does work that way. And so much of the action happens in the locked room. That's why I'm like, I don't know, like, it'd be really hard to fit in, Isabella Rossellini. But, Sydney Bristow's mom, always in my heart, even though that's like the least of her great career roles. Or Marcel the Shell's grandma.
Aww.
Grandma. So, obviously somebody you don't want to waste.
I just want to note what a mistake we made. We never replaced Eddie Redmayne in Theory of Everything in our Oscar Ferry flashback. We spent so much time and points bringing in 3 actors to be nominated, David Oyelowo, Ralph Fiennes, and Miles Teller to be nominated, but we never actually changed the winner because we didn't. We were spending our points in other places. Because Greg's right. Like, that should have been. That should have been.
That should have been Ralph Fiennes.
That's wild. I have nothing really to add about the movie because I didn't read the book, and I don't know anything beyond what you've both already said about Conclave. I will just note that we've here like an hour, like around the hour 35 mark, I think is where we started to finally do the deviation of the podcast, where Greg and I chose winners, where we were like, we didn't know if this movie was going to be good, and we heard stories that made it sound like we were going to like it and it would be good. And Jen was like, well, both of those movies are not going to do well at the Oscars. So I actually think they're losers, which is fair. That's just different ways
That's
of looking at
podcasting.
it. That's podcasting.
I can't leave Isabella Rossellini behind. One more role that is absolutely the peak of her career is when Jack Donaghy, in a divorce proceedings, threatens to take her share of the Arby's franchise they own. And Tina Fey got Isabella Rossellini to say, damn it, Jack, you know I love my big beef and cheddar, which is the greatest, the hardest I ever laughed at an episode of 30 Rock. And so maybe she is going to be wasted in that. But hey, maybe they could work the Arby's franchise into Conclave. It could happen. It could happen.
Product placement. They got to eat when they're deliberating.
Sir, this is an Arby's. Is the tagline. Jen, is there anything you want to add? I think we've done our winners and loser rounds. Greg and I are, I think I could speak for Greg to say we're pretty close to tapped out. But you have been more involved in this as we crest towards the 2 hour mark. What are you thinking that you'd like to add?
So, Joker Fralia Do is we're not gonna have to worry about that.
Big time loser. The biggest loser, probably, right?
If we made it around to another round of losers, that was going to be my pick, I think.
Yeah.
Just because the original Joker did so well at the Oscars compared to what people expected. And so everyone's kind of like, is this one also going to be like that? And it sounds like the answer is no, for a number of reasons. One, Lady Gaga underused.
Mm-hmm.
I think David Ehrlich said that he thought this movie was bad, but on purpose to like troll the audience. Richard Lawson said he thought it was boring, like he fell asleep.
I think it was David Ehrlich. Sorry, Jen.
Go ahead. You're good.
I think that it was either David Ehrlich or someone inspired by what David Ehrlich said that said, "Oh, this movie sounds like Gremlins 2." Where it's like a director has a successful movie, and but by the look on both of your faces, I don't think that means anything to you. But like Joe Dante made Gremlins, and it's this little like scary movie about the gremlins in a town, but it's kind of funny. And Joe Dante like leans more towards comedy anyway. But it was like this horror movie, and it made a lot of money. So they were like, "Please do Gremlins 2," and he was like, "No, I'm going to make like 2 other movies." And they were like, "But please do Gremlins 2." And they tried to get other people, and they wouldn't do it. And they're like, "Just do Gremlins 2, and you can do whatever you want." And he made a Looney Tunes movie with gremlins. It was just like, great, that's what I want to do. And there's like, at one point, the film breaks, and the gremlins come into the theater and they find Hulk Hogan, and Hulk Hogan talks to the camera to tell the gremlins they have to stop interrupting the movie and let Gremlins 2, the new batch, keep going. And it's just like, what is going on? And it was like, no one knew what to do. Everyone was just like, what's happening? And it was just like Joe Dante saying, I never want to make another Gremlins movie. I'm going to do this. And I'm going to try to undermine everything that made the first movie successful and just make a movie that I want to make, so you never bother me again. And it worked. And maybe that's what Todd Phillips did. And if he did, I actually want to see Joker 2.
Well, but I don't think anyone had a, wow, this was so wild, I loved it kind of reaction. Everyone kind of were like,
right.
It seems like it was a lot more tepid. Like everyone's kind of like, eh. So that's why I would classify it kind of as a loser. Scrolling through the list, Pedro Almodovar's movie that I made a reference to in our opening bit did win the Golden Lion at Venice. And I feel like, but people were like, is this good? And so, so a lot of people I've heard speculating that maybe it won just because it's Pedro Almodovar. No one wanted to like say that his first movie in English was bad. And everyone likes Tilda Swinton and Julianne Moore. And like people wanted to like this movie, even if it's not that good. But then other people also like it. So again, in keeping with this theme of like, it's, but I do feel like we're going to have to watch that one because it feels like, because Sean Baker won the Palme d'Or, he's American. So we don't have that clear Palme d'Or winner director becomes the person included in Best Picture. So I feel like this could take that spot. And then in terms of like, I don't know, I feel really bad that I did not talk about Wild Robot at all during this. I was planning to, which is why I didn't take Greg's bait at the beginning of the episode, because he tried to bait me into talking about Wild Robot. And I was like, no, I'm gonna save it for one of my picks, and then we never got there. I sacrificed it for the segues. But that movie has gotten really positive reviews. Like, people are like, the animation style is beautiful, the voice acting, especially Lupita Nyong'o, apparently incredible. The only bad thing I've heard about it is that the story is too simplistic. But guess what? It's adapted from a children's book, so get over it. And it's that, yeah, like it's like, I've heard a comparison to Pixar in its heyday, that it's like really pitching adults and kids in a way that we haven't seen in a really long time. So I'm really excited for it. And I read that we could do book club episode of that. I think that's what Greg was joking about, because I have read that book, the book that this movie is based on. It's really good, and my kids were really into it. They were like, "Can we read the robot movie? Like, we want to know what happens to Roz and the baby goose." And I was like, "Yes, please, let's do it." And there are 2 other books. It's a trilogy, so get ready if this movie
Tame
does
Robot.
well, it's the I mean, the titles kind of give away the story, but it's the Wild Robot.
Two Robot is
No.
the sequel.
The Wild Robot escapes and protect the. Oh no, I was like, serve and protect the Wild Robot. No, that's not it.
Jeez.
Well, I'll just say while you look that up, we're close enough to release of Wild Robot that I feel like we're really in the press cycle of it, and so like Lupita did WTF last week, I think, and that's often a move when you are starting to run. Not that I really think she's running for Best Picture, but I think that means there's a big push behind this movie. Obviously, the one to beat is Inside Out 2, but Pixar sequel, super commercially successful. It feels like the Academy might swerve and be like, no, we like the more artsy pick. Although is this Imagination? Or sorry, Illumination?
This is
DreamWorks. So
yeah.
So it's not like it's not a Wolf Walkers or something like that.
No. It's a big studio.
It's a big studio, and so I think it doesn't necessarily get that advantage, but it feels, for all the reasons you just said, it's more like Craftsman-y, and that if that's the branch voting, it might edge out Inside Out, even though I think it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I mean, I think Inside Out 2 gets nominated, but I think this is stiff. It sounds like this is going to be stiff competition for it. Like, I've had lots of critics saying that, or I've heard lots of critics saying that this is the movie to beat for the year, that this is the best that they've seen all year. But there's some weird snail movie that I don't really know about, because I didn't put that in our spreadsheet.
Yeah,
there's
that's
like
some
adult
snail
claymation
movie.
Yeah. That Mike and Oscar hilariously were like, we hate this movie, and they're like, oh, never mind, people like it. So,
I think the real issue is that people are going back and forth. Wild Robot, Inside Out 2, the snail movie. They're all forgetting the real animated Academy Award winner for next year, which is The Lord of the Rings: War of the Rohirrim, coming out.
Your hype draft pick.
Yeah.
Well, what? I don't know. Oh, is that true? I'd have to go
Yes.
check. I'd have to go check. I just know that it's a great movie that everyone says is going to win. So they're all out there on the streets talking about it.
Did you all get that trailer on Beetlejuice? Because I got it. That was the first time I'd seen the trailer in the theater, and it was very interesting. The Beetlejuice crowd, as I said, very interesting sociological study I conducted being in the Beetlejuice crowd. I would say they were really into the start of that trailer, and they're like, yeah. Lord of the Rings. I love Lord of the Rings. And then there was like a little deflation when they realized, like, oh, this is anime. So yeah. I don't think that's representative, and I do think it's a good test for the Academy to really try to embrace international animation more. But I do think there's just a little bit of a stigma on anime that it's not for me, it's for them.
Yeah.
And so I worry that might hurt its chances.
I mean, I think even if it was traditionally animated, and by traditional, I mean Western animated, I guess, I think there would have been a similar reaction of just sort of like, oh, it's not real. Okay. That it's like, I thought this was going to be an actual movie, but we're not doing it. Or if they even thought it was going to be like, just a re-release of the movies, they'd be like, great, like I want to see that. They don't want to see a new thing that's like in the past or whatever.
No, they want one Gollum movie that is already 2 and probably on its way to being 3 Gollum movies. Oh Lord, somebody give Peter Jackson an editor.
I don't want to end on that note. Let's do super quick. If you had to choose Best Picture frontrunner right now, it's way too early. But there's usually always it's interesting. There's usually always a clear frontrunner that then loses its spot later on in the season. I don't really have a clear sense as to what movie that would be.
I'm going to plant my flag. This isn't that it's the frontrunner, but I'm going to make my call for right now. Dune Part 2. I think that all these other movies jostle and fight and they do these things and everyone's like, what was the best movie? It was Dune. And then they just give it to Dune.
That's a hot take and a good take. It really needs a re-release to get that hype up. I mean, it's in everybody's homes already and people have seen it, but it does feel like March was 17 years ago. So people have forgotten. You think of all that's happened in the last 3 weeks, like in national news stories, and then you think about like where you were in March. So I respect the take. I'm slightly productively skeptical. Hey,
maybe they do an IMAX re-release and that does it. We kept saying that for Oppenheimer, right?
Yeah,
they didn't do it quite enough.
They didn't do enough. They didn't need it. But I could see it early mid-January IMAX re-release.
There's such a good repertory re-release market right now. Look at Coraline. Coraline is smashing all these records and we haven't talked about it at all, but like it's crazy, for a one of those kind of premium re-release things that company does. It's amazing. It's working out so well. I just want to say, if I had to pick another loser, I would say it's Megalopolis, which is just completely out of any Oscar discussion. I would say it sounds like its initial release, plus then the nobody wants to distribute it. Plus, then the marketing is AI generated and needs to be retooled. I'm still excited for it. Jen recently, I'm going to out you, in a text message said like she's interested in a like can't turn away from a car crash kind of way, which I think is unfair. I think it's still going to be something crazy and fun. But that's my next loser pick because I think it's out of the discussion. I honestly come from the like far away distant view. The one that feels like the front runner to me is Anora. And I will put the caveats that it sounds like it's out there and not the usual fare. But, coming off of Oppenheimer, which was such a traditional type of Best Picture winner, coming off of Everything Everywhere All at Once that showed how wild and accepting the Academy can be. I think the pendulum might come back just enough if this can kind of split the difference between those two and be engaging and a little, like Jen and I watching a Deadpool movie and being like, oh, there's some naughty words. If the Academy can be like, oh, I'm seeing some slightly naughty things and I feel a little cool, I think that might just hit the right spot. Jen, it was your question. What is your pick at the moment?
Yeah, I'm compelled by your Anora argument. Not to zag too much, but A Complaint Unknown, the Bob Dylan, Timothée Chalamet movie, that is probably going to just like bulldoze this entire conversation when it comes out because it is so Academy friendly. So just be prepared. I would be prepared for that. But I would say, I don't know. Yeah, other than Anora seems to be the clear champion of award season so far, right? Because it won the Palme d'Or, and that was back in May, and it hasn't really lost any steam. It seems to have just gained more momentum in this fall film festival slew. So I think that's a strong pick. Oh, we didn't even talk about the end. Oh no. terrible. There's so many we didn't talk about. Actually, if it comes out this year, I think The Brutalist might low key be a front runner that emerges. Maybe not right now, but it would have to be announced as like when it's coming out and stuff, so people know it's for this year. But
I was gonna say another loser potentially, but it's more of a just question mark. Is The Blitz, because The Blitz sat out everything, and so when I hear pundits, that one remains as the like, well, we kind of assumed on paper this was going to be really strong, but it certainly sounds like Saoirse Ronan's going to get run for the Outrun, which we didn't talk about, more so than for Blitz, where she might have a smaller role. I believe they've held the Blitz for the London Film Festival, which makes sense thematically and should be a good hometown crowd. Maybe that's the All Quiet, where it's like nobody's paying attention and it just kind of blows up. That or A Complete Unknown. A Complete Unknown, of course, directed by James Mangold, who's fresh off of Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny.
I really had to scroll quickly for that one.
I do wish listeners could see the scramble on Jen's face when she realizes what's coming, and she's like, "I did it! I gotta find it." I think The Brutalist is a good call for like what we have now. If I gave a more direct related to the film festival's answer, I think I would have gone with that. But that's again because it feels like Honora's like such the leader that it's like, yeah, that's there. But The Brutalist is good, and that is kind of an extra knock or extra sort of kick in the shins to Megalopolis, where people were like, Megalopolis isn't even the like 2.5 hour plus movie about an architect trying to rebuild the universe. That like it's not even the best version of that movie this year because The Brutalist exists.
Yeah, The Brutalist also feels like the perfect blend of prestige and artsy, but also like apparently all the critics went to their phones right afterwards to Google if the main character played by Adrian Brody is a real person. So it had apparently it gives off docudrama kind of historical fiction vibes, even though it is fictionalized. And so like it does feel like it kind of has that Oppenheimer profile a little bit, because I've heard some people being like, I don't know if the Academy's going to go for this. It seems like it's a little too big a movie. Other people are sort of saying this is a masterpiece and how can they deny it, right? So like, you know, that seems like the right place to be. It just has to actually come out this year.
big Lydia Tarr energy of like,
yeah, that's exactly. I think it was Richard Lawson, who apparently is the most reliable critic in my rotation for these film festivals, because I think his comments I remember the most, and he was like, yeah, it was totally a Tar situation. Everyone was like, is that person real? Like, but apparently he is kind of like inspired by actual real life brutalist architects, but the character itself is completely fictional. Yeah. Okay. I could keep going, honestly, but I'm going to spare both of you because we've passed the 2-hour mark. And I'm sure we'll talk about lots of these movies as they come out in the next couple months. I guess we don't need closing thoughts. Greg.
I have a closing thought. I will say, like, we're there. Like, it's so exciting. I mean, again, we've had a few kind of awards-ish movies over the summer. We aren't really talking about them being in major contention. But now, like, you know, again, we all have Megalopolis tickets. I know I have a ticket for The Substance, which also didn't come up, but is in the play for some of the acting categories at very least. And so it's really exciting as we've been mapping out the weeks ahead. It's like, oh, we're in fall season. And, you know, there are a few of these that are already on the edge of going into my category of just let us see the movie already. Actually, Nora might be the most I feel that towards. But it feels like as I look through your spreadsheet, which was masterfully done, there's a good sprinkling of movies in September, October, November. There, of course, will be that big Christmas Day push, but it feels like we can get a lot of these checked off across the fall, and that's exciting because I think the race is always more exciting to trace the more movies you've seen and the more questions you have. So yes, those are my final thoughts. Hey, if you want to find me elsewhere on the internet, I'm on most social media platforms as Ion Cannon, EYEONCANON. Over on Letterboxd, that's my tag. And as I alluded to far too often, I'm trying to keep up with the most popular movie releases right now, which is very tricky. And there's some really weird stuff that is percolating. I know PT's ahead of me, or at least he was last time I checked, and I don't know how he would have fallen behind. But I'm about to watch my 365th movie of the year, which was my goal for the year, was to average a movie a day. And so I will not be seeing any more movies from now till the end of the year. So I will far surpass that.
You said that you would destroy this Sith, not join them.
I don't know why that felt right to play at that moment, but it did. That's you and PT fighting over your letterbox stats.
Over who can be highest.
Yeah.
PT,
who
you
has the high-
past 400 by now.
I really hate saying this because now it's actually embarrassing. It's 466.
Whoa.
I will say, like, at least 50 of those are short films that are like under 10 minutes, because I fell into the movie like world of like the short films for a while. And then I was like watching, like, I would have nights where I'd be like, I'm going to watch like 5 silent movies from like 1915 that are like under just a few minutes long. So it's a little dicey, but it's certainly 400 like actual legitimate movies, which is very very sad, but also great. This is the one context where I can maybe brag about it, but it also doesn't feel good. So this is why I don't read any of these books that Greg keeps talking about. Is instead of reading for an hour and 15 minutes, I'll watch like a Western from 1948 and be like, that's an hour. It's an hour. I can do that. That's no problem. And then I'll go to bed. And then I watch 2 of them. Anyway, you can find all these great things that I've been watching on Letterboxd on my account at PT McNiff, PTMCNIFF. So follow me there. You can also follow the show on Letterboxd at LTR Pod is the account name, or you can search for the hashtag LTR Pod and you can see where what Greg and I have been watching and like 2/3 of what Jen has been watching when she remembers to put the hashtag on. So you can also follow the show on other social medias, Instagram and Threads at The Long Take Review. You can send us an email, thelongtakereview@gmail.com, or you can just subscribe wherever you are listening to us right now. Hit subscribe, leave a rating, leave a review, leave a comment. Let us know what's going on. Jen, where can folks find you?
You can find me on Instagram and Threads at Sopchockchai, SOPCHOCKCHAI, and on Letterboxd at Qui-Gon Jen. And yeah, stay tuned if you liked this episode, which I'm assuming if you're listening by now, you did. We have a lot more of reviews of all these movies to come. I think next week we have potentially His Three Daughters, which is going to be a Netflix movie, which we didn't talk about today because I think it premiered last year and they held it. But it could be in the Oscar conversation. And PT and I just saw Hundreds of Beavers in theaters. So if Greg has seen that movie, maybe we could talk about that one as well. And then in terms of movies we talked about today that are kind of coming up the soonest, Megalopolis, we're going to see next week. And then Wild Robot comes out after that. So, and then it's all Joker, Folie à Deux, and Wolves, which apparently no one cares about. A movie that's going straight to Apple TV Plus. Anyway,
Substance is before all of those too. That's I think that's Thursday.
Oh, I didn't put that on here.
Yeah,
yes.
I think you can see Substance
it's this weekend.
Week, which it's like 2.5 hours. Which I was like, I guess I'm not seeing it for my 9:00 Thursday movie because
probably not,
because I get sleepy.
I also feel like that might be on the edge for Jen. That's a body horror.
I mean, maybe I could do it for Demi Moore. I don't know.
You won't be the first to have said it.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for listening. You can follow The Long Take Review on Substack at thelongtake.substack.com. Subscribe for free to receive new podcast episodes as well as written reviews of films with Oscar buzz and new films and series from pop franchises like Star Wars and Marvel.